Sometimes the life you build with love becomes the very thing that breaks you. Trust is a fragile thing, easily given, quietly broken, and almost impossible to reclaim once shattered. Pregnant wife catches billionaire husband cheating, divorces by phone and becomes a boss abroad. You won't believe how quickly a dream life can collapse. Elena Martinez thought she had it all, a devoted husband, a life of luxury, and a baby on the way. The whispers of infidelity seemed unreal, until the day she saw it all with her own eyes in a moment that shattered everything. Elena's world collapsed beneath her. Her heart shattered, but her spirit stayed strong. She walked away from the empire she helped build, determined to carve out her own destiny. This is the gripping story of heartbreak and reinvention, of a pregnant wife who refused to be broken and instead became her own legend. Elena Martinez was raised in a modest home in the suburbs of Austin, Texas. Her parents, Rafael and Carmen Martinez, were hardworking immigrants from Colombia, committed to giving their children every opportunity they had never had. Elena embraced their vision wholeheartedly from a young age. She excelled in academics, painting, and athletics. She was the kind of girl who could light up a canvas with one hand and win a sprint with the other. Her ponytail swayed as she juggled school, sports, and her creative passions. By the time she entered college at Georgetown University, she had a crystal-clear plan for her future. She dreamed of studying international affairs, maybe even joining a global organization like the UN. But life had its own thrilling and dangerous course in store. It was at Georgetown where she first crossed paths with Damian Whitmore, a tall, magnetic figure with an unmistakable air of confidence. Damian was already well known around campus for his sharp entrepreneurial mind and his family's immense fortune. His grandfather had co-founded Whitmore Global, a powerhouse spanning industries from luxury travel to cutting-edge tech. Damian's energy was magnetic. People were in awe of his intellect, but it was his effortless charm that truly drew them in. Elena met him at a charity fundraiser hosted by her friend, Maya Lin, who was organizing donations for education programs in underdeveloped countries. Elena had been helping with check-in at the front table, and when she glanced up into Damian's intense green eyes, she felt a jolt she couldn't explain. He introduced himself with smooth confidence, but beneath the polite small talk was something electric, an instant connection she hadn't felt before, deeper, an intensity that Elena had never experienced before. Their first conversation was light. She admired the elegant design of the event's invitation cards, while he remarked on how passionately she spoke about the children's education cause. But under the surface-level exchanges, it was clear they had stumbled upon something meaningful. By the end of the evening, they had exchanged numbers, shared a few inside jokes, and even planned a date for the following week. Their relationship took off faster than anyone had anticipated. Within months, they were inseparable, finishing each other's sentences and laughing over shared memories. Elena wasn't just drawn to Damian's wealth, although the opulent dinners and designer gifts were hard to ignore. It was his mind, his drive, and the vision he carried for the future that captivated her. She could see him one day leading the Whitmore empire and guiding it into a new age of socially conscious ventures. Damian, in turn, admired Elena's radiant optimism and her effortless ability to connect with people from every background. After graduating, Damian launched an ambitious tech startup that used artificial intelligence to optimize global logistics systems. It started off small, just a few people in a co-working space in Seattle, but it quickly attracted large investments, including one from a major firm linked to Marcus Juan. Elena, meanwhile, accepted a job at a global nonprofit, pursuing her passion for impact-driven work. But over time, she found herself increasingly immersed in Damian's high-powered world. She accompanied him to international conferences, rubbing elbows with celebrities like Jessica Alba and philanthropists like Bill Gates. Their evenings sparkled with red carpets, champagne toasts, and exclusive networking behind closed doors. Eventually, Elena took charge of the social impact arm of Damian's expanding company, merging her humanitarian ideals with his growing influence. Together, they were a powerhouse. One part sharp-minded billionaire, one part deeply compassionate changemaker. Their wedding became the event of the year, held at the Whitmore family estate in Aspen, Colorado. The guest list read like a global directory of the elite: politicians, movie stars, tech tycoons. Everyone wanted a front-row seat to the union of these two rising stars. Elena's father, Raphael, walked her down the aisle with pride in his eyes, while Carmen wiped away tears of joy. Damien's parents, Edward and Lorraine, watched proudly, believing their son had truly found the perfect life partner. In the golden glow of that Colorado summer evening, beneath a canopy of roses, Elena vowed to love and cherish Damien forever. But the forever she envisioned was more fragile than she could have known. Beneath even the most perfect-looking life, shadows can lie in wait, ready to unravel everything when the time is right. As Damien's empire expanded, so did demands on his time and energy. Elena did her best to keep pace, but the man she once knew seemed to be slipping through her fingers. One business trip, one missed dinner, one unanswered message at a time. She worked tirelessly to maintain the warm, close connection that had once defined their relationship. Still, late-night silences and rushed conversations became their new norm. Cracks had begun to form, subtle at first, invisible to outsiders. Whispers about Damien being overworked and rumors of extramarital distractions began to circulate in the social circles they frequented. A family friend once awkwardly hinted at seeing Damien at a private cocktail event with someone who wasn't Elena. She brushed it off with a laugh, believing in their love and convinced that no one could possibly know her husband better than she did. But deep down, a quiet voice had started asking questions she didn't want to answer. For a while, the rumors seemed impossible, almost absurd. And yet, as time would prove, truth can be far more disturbing than fiction. Damien Whitmore's rise, from a brilliant Georgetown graduate to billionaire CEO, was nothing short of meteoric. His tech venture, Whitmore Supply Chain Innovations, had cornered a market that few had even identified. Massive retailers like Target, global e-commerce leaders like ShopSphere, and international shipping giants all vied for his insights. Through smart investments, timely acquisitions, and a bit of luck, Damien's fortune multiplied by the day. Soon he was gracing the pages of Forbes and Fortune, celebrated as the next visionary of the tech world. But with every article praising his genius, Elena noticed how much colder he had become at home, warm in public, distant in private. Elena, on her end, was swept into a wave of luxury that she never could have imagined. She traded in her modest yet cozy apartment for Damien's sweeping penthouse overlooking downtown Chicago. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Lake Michigan, shimmering like a pool of endless dreams. Her favorite space was the private library, a peaceful escape filled with rare books on philosophy, art, and geopolitics. Between her nonprofit work and social obligations, Elena often disappeared into that room for hours, getting lost in stories that offered a respite from the high-speed life swirling around her. It became her sanctuary, and sometimes her hiding place. But with the rise in fortune came a rise in extravagance. Damien bought a private jet and named it Elena's Wings, claiming it was a tribute to his beloved wife. Her walk-in closet swelled with custom gowns from Parisian designers, and weekly charity galas became the norm. When the Whitmores went out for dinner, it was always to Michelin-starred restaurants, places like Alinea in Chicago or 11 Madison Park in New York, always with a driver and a discreet entourage of security. Despite the dizzying wealth surrounding her, Elena stayed grounded. She made it a point to personally greet every staff member in their household, from the cleaning crew to the sous chef who prepared Damien's gourmet meals. She knew their names and the names of their children. Her sincerity and warmth won her the admiration and loyalty of everyone around her. Even Lorraine Whitmore, Damien's often reserved mother, eventually warmed to Elena's heartfelt nature. For a time, it seemed like a golden era in their marriage. They traveled frequently, to Tokyo for global conferences, taking side trips to Kyoto's ancient temples, where they offered silent prayers for continued blessings. In Paris, where Damien sought to expand his logistics empire across Europe, they rented a charming apartment overlooking the Seine, which quickly became their second home. They entertained diplomats, CEOs, and celebrities alike, forming alliances that helped establish Whitmore Supply Chain Innovations as a household name among major corporations. Amid all this dizzying success, Elena discovered she was pregnant. The news overwhelmed her with joy. She imagined a small child running through the corridors of their Colorado estate, laughing in the sun, bearing the best of Damien's brilliance and her own nurturing soul. Damien was ecstatic at first. He immediately promised top-tier medical care. He arranged for prenatal appointments with renowned specialist Dr. Samuel Green at the elite Northwestern Medical Center in Chicago. He even commissioned a lavish nursery, designed by an award-winning interior designer. But as the pregnancy progressed, Elena began to sense a growing distance in Damien. He started skipping her appointments, instead sending his personal assistant Grant in his place. His business trips to Dubai, London, and Berlin became more frequent and more vague. When Elena asked for details, Damien waved her off, saying they were all last-minute and too complex to explain. Then came the late-night phone calls, the hushed tones, the way he'd quickly hang up whenever she entered the room. Elena tried to reason with herself. Maybe it was just the pressure of expanding a global empire. Maybe he was overwhelmed by the thought of balancing business with fatherhood. Then one afternoon, as she rested in their Paris apartment, she received a call from her old Georgetown friend, Maya Lin. Maya worked in venture capital and often moved in the same elite circles as the Whitmores. In a hesitant tone, Maya mentioned hearing rumors about Damien's closeness to a young socialite. Her name was Celeste Laurent, an heiress with a flair for fashion design. Whispers claimed they'd been seen together at an exclusive rooftop event in Paris, just the two of them, lingering long after the crowd had thinned. Elena felt a tight squeeze in her chest but quickly brushed it off, reminding Maya that rumors were the bread and butter of tabloid journalism, especially when it came to high-profile marriages. But this rumor felt different. Not wild, not outrageous, just plausible enough to hurt. Still, she couldn't completely shake the unease. The seed had been planted, and now doubt began to weave itself into her thoughts. She began recalling small, seemingly insignificant moments. The faint trace of lipstick on Damien's collar. He'd insisted it was left over from a kiss earlier that morning. A kiss she didn't recall sharing. Or the times he claimed to be exhausted after long meetings, but came home oddly energized, laughing to himself while texting, with a smugness she couldn't place, smelling of a cologne she hadn't gifted him. He'd started locking his phone, changed his passcode, left rooms to take calls, all small things, until they weren't. One by one, these inconsistencies began to stack up like pieces of a puzzle, slowly forming an image she didn't want to see. Yet Elena was determined not to fall into suspicion without evidence. She had witnessed too many relationships implode from baseless paranoia. Besides, this was Damien, her husband, her partner, the man who had once sworn eternal devotion beneath a canopy of roses in Aspen. She reminded herself of all the causes they championed together. The heartfelt laughter, the private moments that had once defined their love. Could it all have been a lie? Had he already started building a separate life, one she had no access to, no say in? No, she told herself, there had to be another explanation. But as Elena would soon learn, logic often has little power in the face of betrayal, especially when it comes from the person who vowed to love you most. The moment of truth arrived in a way she never could have foreseen. Elena was a few months pregnant, her belly gently curved beneath the soft fabric of a designer maternity dress. She had flown back to Chicago unexpectedly, following a short visit to her parents in Austin, feeling a sudden need to reconnect with her roots. Damien believed she'd be away for another 2 days, which gave her a spontaneous idea. She decided to surprise him with a romantic dinner at home. Just the two of them, celebrating the little life growing inside her. After instructing the household staff to prepare Damien's favorite meal, roasted rack of lamb with rosemary and garlic, Elena picked up a bouquet of red roses from the local florist. She also stopped by a boutique patisserie to grab a specialty tarte au noix, his favorite. With an excited flutter in her chest, she made her way toward their penthouse. She made her way to their penthouse, imagining the look of surprise on Damien's face when he saw her. But what she found instead would be burned into her memory forever. The penthouse was oddly quiet when Elena stepped inside. She had expected to see their butler, Julian, bustling about, or at least hear some soft music playing in the background. But the silence felt thick, almost eerie. She set the bouquet of red roses gently on the marble entryway table and moved quietly toward the master bedroom, drawn by the sound of faint voices. The door was slightly ajar, just enough to give her a view of something that made her blood run cold. Damien was not alone. Standing beside him was a tall, slender woman with dark hair, dressed in nothing but a silk robe. They were laughing, a soft, intimate sound that sent a ripple of disgust through Elena's body. Without warning, the woman leaned in and placed a slow, deliberate kiss on Damien's lips. He responded far too easily, his arms wrapping around her waist like it was second nature. Not a moment of hesitation, not even guilt. The shock struck Elena like a punch to the chest. She nearly dropped the pastry box she was holding. The thud of it hitting the hardwood floor echoed through the hallway. The woman, whom Elena instantly recognized as Celeste Laurent from a photo Maya had once shown her, turned around in surprise. Damien stepped back as if yanked into reality, his face shifting from confusion to horror in a split second. His lips still glistened from the kiss. For several endless moments, no one moved. Elena felt her heart pounding so violently, she wondered if they could hear it too. Words clogged her throat, unable to surface. All the lipstick stains, the unexplained cologne, the distant behavior, it hadn't been paranoia. It was real, cold, undeniable reality, happening right in front of her eyes. Elena. Damien finally stammered, his voice cracking. It's not what it looks like. But how could it be anything else? Tears welled up in Elena's eyes as she gently placed the pastry box on the floor, her hands trembling as she fought to hold herself together. She had just walked into the kind of betrayal that couldn't be explained away. Celeste, for her part, seemed entirely unfazed by the moment's wait. In fact, she looked vaguely amused, like she'd expected this confrontation all along. Her gaze dropped to Elena's rounded belly, and she gave a faint, mocking smile before coolly turning to grab her things. "I'll leave you two to talk," she said in a syrupy French accent, laced with smugness. She slipped into the adjacent bathroom and shut the door behind her without another glance. The initial shock inside Elena gave way to a rising wave of fury. She wanted to scream, to confront them both, to demand answers, but instead she found herself frozen, choking on silent sobs, shaking her head in stunned disbelief. "Why, Damien? Why would you do this?" Elena's voice cracked as she took a trembling step back. He reached toward her as if to touch her arm to stop her from spiraling. "Please, Elena, listen." But she pulled away before he could finish. For a painful second, images of their life together flooded her mind. The charitable causes they championed side by side, their extravagant wedding, the growing life inside her now. And yet, here was the man who had promised to protect her heart, now so carelessly breaking it in the home they once called sacred. "I can't do this," Elena whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. In that moment, she knew, whatever trust or love had once existed between them was gone, crushed. She spun on her heel and stormed out of the bedroom, ignoring Damien's desperate pleas echoing behind her. She reached the elevator, stabbing the call button with shaking fingers until the doors slid open. As she descended, sobs racked her body, each one tearing deeper than the last. She wrapped her arms around her belly instinctively, as if shielding her unborn child from the storm unraveling around them. When she reached the lobby, startled staff members looked at her tear-streaked face with concern, but she brushed past them, stumbling into the cool night. A cold gust of Chicago wind slapped her across the face, jolting her out of her daze. She flagged down a cab with a trembling hand, not even knowing where she wanted to go. All she knew was that she had to get out, away from the betrayal, the lies, and the man she thought she knew. Somewhere in the back of her mind, a new resolve began to form. She wouldn't crumble. She wouldn't be defined by Damien's betrayal. But first, she needed time. To think, to plan, to protect herself and her unborn child. For the first time since marrying him, she understood something terrifying. Damien's power and wealth could be turned against her. That thought chilled her nearly as much as the infidelity she'd just witnessed. Elena spent that night at a luxury hotel in the heart of the city. Yet she hardly noticed the plush bedding, the sweeping skyline views, or the state-of-the-art spa amenities. None of it mattered in the face of her devastation. She replayed the moment at the penthouse over and over again, hoping, irrationally, that it might somehow end differently. But it never did. Damien's betrayal remained a brutal, immovable truth. Her phone buzzed relentlessly with messages and calls from him, but she couldn't bring herself to answer. She lay curled on the bed, arms protectively cradling her stomach, as if she could somehow shield the baby from all of it. She kept whispering reminders to herself, to breathe, to stay calm, for the baby's sake. Through the haze of heartbreak, she managed to dial her best friend Maya Lynn, who arrived without hesitation. Maya found Elena curled in bed, tear-stained and broken, her hair messy, her face pale, but beneath the pain, a quiet determination had begun to rise. Over mugs of herbal tea, Elena recounted every detail. Maya listened without judgment, her own eyes blazing with anger at the thought of Damien's betrayal. "He doesn't deserve you," she said, pulling Elena into a firm hug. "You know that, right?" Elena nodded weakly, though she wasn't sure she truly believed it. Her heart was a tangle of emotions, rage, sorrow, disbelief, and strangely, guilt. As twisted as it felt, she couldn't stop wondering if she had done something wrong, if she had somehow failed as a wife. But that thought didn't last long. Her dignity pushed back. No, she reminded herself, this was on him, and him alone. By the next morning, Damien's calls had turned frantic. Voicemail after voicemail poured in. First, tearful apologies, then panicked pleas to meet in person. But Elena didn't respond. She hardened her heart against his words. She knew she needed a plan. If she was going to walk away from this marriage, she had to do it cleanly, safely, and in a way that protected her future and her unborn child. Her phone buzzed again. But this time, it wasn't Damien. It was Lorraine Whitmore, Damien's mother. Elena hesitated, then answered, her fingers trembling. Lorraine's voice filled the line, trembling with worry. "Elena, my dear, please tell me, is it true? What Damien told me, he said you caught him and Celeste at the apartment?" Elena clenched her jaw, the grief rising all over again. "Yes," she managed, voice barely above a whisper. "It's true. I don't know what else to do. I'm done, Lorraine. I can't live like this." A long, heavy pause followed. "I understand," Lorraine said at last, her voice full of pain. "I'm so sorry. I never imagined he would betray you like this. I'm trying to get to the bottom of it all. But please, if you need anything, call me. No matter what happens between you and Damien, you'll always be family to me." The promise didn't erase the pain, but it reminded Elena that she wasn't completely alone. She thanked Lorraine softly, then hung up, sinking deeper into the armchair of the hotel suite. The future looked blurry, like fog on a distant horizon. But in her heart, a quiet determination was building. 2 days passed without further contact. Then, somehow, Damien found out which hotel she was staying at. He showed up in the lobby, demanding to see her. Security rang her suite from the front desk. Elena could hear his voice through the phone, desperate and pleading. "Elena, please. Just let me talk to you. We can fix this." Elena remained silent. Then she heard him say it. "I love you. Think about our baby." Something inside her snapped. She grabbed her phone and quickly dialed Damien's number. There was no way she was going to let him see her face, not after everything. When he answered, she cut straight to the point. "I'm only going to say this once. We're done. I want a divorce." His panicked voice tumbled out in gasps. "Elena, please." "No, we can go to therapy." "We can?" She didn't let him finish. "How long has this been going on?" A long silence. She could feel the truth hanging heavy in the air before he finally admitted, "A few months." Elena swallowed hard, blinking through the pain. "You knew I was pregnant, and you still went behind my back?" Her voice quivered. "You lied to me, Damien, every single day." She could almost hear him flinch on the other end of the line. "I made a mistake." "No," she snapped, her voice growing steadier, firmer. "A mistake is forgetting our anniversary. What you did, what you kept doing was a choice. Repeated, conscious choices to be unfaithful. I'm not going to subject myself or our child to this kind of pain." There was a pause. Then he said something she hadn't expected. "Look, we signed the prenup. You'll be taken care of. I didn't think you'd ever find out." Elena froze. The words hit harder than she could have imagined. So that was it. He wasn't just cheating. He'd calculated everything. Covered his tracks, assumed she'd stay quiet, stay small. He thought money could fix betrayal. His protests came in broken waves, but Elena made her stance clear. "I'll have my lawyer contact you with the details. Don't call me, unless it's about the baby. I can't stomach hearing any more of your excuses." And with that, she hung up. Her whole body shook. With one call, she had ended her marriage. The surreal weight of it all pressed down on her chest, but underneath the pain, there was something else. Relief. She had taken the first step toward taking her life back. The road ahead would be brutal. Legal battles, media frenzy, emotional turmoil. But she refused to let Damien's betrayal define who she was. After the call, she collapsed onto the bed, sobbing into the silk sheets. Maya sat beside her silently, holding her hand as the tears poured out. She whispered calm words, anchoring Elena in the middle of the storm. And through the grief, Elena's mind kept going back to one thing: the baby growing inside her. She promised her unborn child something right then and there. They would have a better life. One without lies. One without pain. She would build that life, no matter how long or difficult the journey ahead would be. Once the divorce process began, Elena realized just how messy life could become when you were married to a billionaire. The paparazzi stalked her relentlessly, desperate to snap a photo of the scorned wife. Headlines filled tabloids and gossip blogs. Elena Martinez flees cheating tech mogul. Heiress designer exposed, Damien Whitmore's mistress revealed. Even respected financial outlets began picking up the story, speculating on how the scandal might impact Whitmore's supply chain innovations stock. Elena felt suffocated by it all, the gossip, the attention, the reminders. She longed for an escape. Memories haunted every corner of Chicago, a city that had once felt like the pinnacle of Elena's dreams. Now it felt suffocating, wrapped in betrayal and pain. She needed to escape, to breathe, to regroup, and more than anything, to protect her child from the chaos swirling around them. That's when she made a bold decision. She would leave the country. One of her dearest friends from her nonprofit days, Adriana Moretti, had relocated to Milan, where she worked for a renowned art gallery partnered with UNESCO. Adriana had been encouraging Elena to visit for years, praising the city's vibrant culture, exquisite food, and rich philanthropic scene. Now, Milan felt like more than just a destination. It felt like salvation. Before leaving, Elena met quietly with her attorney, Brenda Salazar, to finalize the necessary steps in the divorce. Brenda was sharp, fearless, and known for her no-nonsense style in court. She reassured Elena that she would handle everything on the U.S. side, including any aggressive tactics Damien's high-powered legal team might try to use. After all, Damien may have acted like he wanted things civil, but when money and pride were involved, even the simplest negotiations could become ruthless. Elena's parents, Rafael and Carmen, offered her their unconditional support. Though heartbroken to see their daughter in such pain, they admired her strength. Carmen lovingly packed Elena's favorite homemade arepas for the flight, comfort food for whenever she felt alone. Rafael kissed her forehead and whispered in Spanish, "Quédate fuerte, mi hija." Be strong for your child. With a few suitcases, a folder of legal documents, and her mother's arepas carefully tucked in her carry-on, Elena boarded a flight to Milan. As the plane lifted into the sky, she closed her eyes and let the wave of emotions wash over her. Relief, fear, hope, and heartbreak all tangled together. Arriving in Milan felt like stepping into another world. The city's grand architecture, crowned by the majestic Duomo di Milano, stirred something in her that had long been dormant. Adriana was waiting at Malpensa Airport, arms open wide. She pulled Elena into a warm hug and whispered, "You're safe here." She led Elena to a sleek black car waiting just outside, which whisked them away to a cozy apartment in Milan's historic Brera district. Over the next few weeks, Elena allowed herself to heal. She wandered cobblestone streets, lost in the magic of art galleries, luxury boutiques, and tucked-away trattorias. She stood in awe before Da Vinci's Last Supper. She treated herself to gelato at charming sidewalk cafes. She watched the sunrise over the Navigli canals, inhaling the scent of fresh espresso and soaking in the hum of local life. Gradually, she began to rediscover the joy of simple things. But her ambitions couldn't stay buried for long. Her pregnancy grounded her, but it also lit a fire of urgency inside her. She had to secure a future. For herself, but more importantly, for her unborn child. Adriana introduced Elena to several influential figures in Milan's philanthropic and business community. One of them, Giancarlo Benedetti, a venture capitalist with a sharp instinct for social enterprises, took particular interest in Elena's unique blend of nonprofit experience and business acumen. Over espresso at the Armani Cafe, Giancarlo peppered her with questions about her background. He was impressed by her vision and focus, and not long after, he offered her a consulting role at a startup incubator he supported. The job wasn't glamorous by billionaire standards, but it was perfect for Elena. She could stay in Milan, rebuild her professional credibility, and continue pursuing her passion for humanitarian work. More importantly, she could do it on her own terms, free from Damien's shadow. Of course, the divorce loomed constantly in the background. Every so often, Brenda sent updates about the ongoing negotiations, property disputes, spousal support, legal wrangling. Elena also learned that Damien was pushing for shared custody of their unborn child. He claimed to want to be involved as a father, but Elena suspected it was more about control than care. Still, Milan gave her the breathing space she so desperately needed. In many ways, her life there felt like a clean slate. She decorated her apartment with soft, earthy tones, placing fresh flowers near the windows. She joined a prenatal yoga class and gradually built a circle of support with other expecting mothers, women who admired her strength without prying into the wounds of her past. Her belly grew rounder with each passing month, a living testament to the new life she carried and the quiet resilience that bloomed inside her. And so began Elena's journey abroad, a baptism by fire that ignited a spark she hadn't realized existed. Every step she took away from the ruins of her marriage and toward the future she envisioned felt like freedom. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she embraced the uncertainty with a heart wide open. She was, in every sense, rebuilding herself. And she wasn't going to let anyone, not even a billionaire ex-husband, stand in her way again. Life in Milan came with its own challenges, of course, but it also gave Elena something she hadn't felt in a long time: peace. She lived in a cozy apartment with a floral balcony, nestled near the vibrant Piazza del Duomo. Each morning she woke to the soft chime of church bells and the hum of street life, a soundtrack far gentler than the chaos she had left behind. Her new consultancy role at the startup incubator was a whirlwind of innovation and promise. She began attending pitch sessions, where young entrepreneurs unveiled bold ideas, eco-friendly fashion lines, aid-driven health apps, and ethical supply chain platforms. With her unique experience in both philanthropy and business, Elena quickly became a sought-after asset. Giancarlo Benedetti noticed it too. He started introducing her to his network of investors and corporate leaders, recognizing the value she brought to the table. Day by day, Elena's confidence grew. She was no longer just the pregnant ex-wife of a billionaire. She was a professional woman rebuilding her identity on her own terms. Balancing work and pregnancy wasn't easy. Morning sickness sometimes forced her to slip out of meetings early, and fatigue crept in by the afternoon. But she kept going, driven by determination and the life growing inside her. She saw a compassionate Italian obstetrician, Dr. Lucia Romano, who encouraged her every step of the way. "Your baby feels everything you feel," Dr. Romano reminded her at one visit, gently touching her shoulder. "Let your strength and optimism lead you both." The more Elena immersed herself in Milan's startup ecosystem, the more a bold new idea began to form. She wanted to create something of her own, a venture that merged technology, global impact, and her passion for humanitarian work. She thought back to her days working alongside Damien, especially the constant logistical hurdles nonprofits faced when trying to get medical supplies or educational materials into remote areas. What if she could change that? What if she built a platform to simplify and streamline those efforts, making it easier, faster, and more cost-effective for aid to reach those in need? Fueled by this vision, Elena spent her evenings sketching ideas, doing research, and leveraging her network. Adriana, always her biggest supporter, listened eagerly and introduced her to like-minded collaborators. Giancarlo arranged casual brainstorming sessions, offering thoughtful feedback and business insight. Bit by bit, Elena's new venture began to take form. She named it Global Bridge, a platform designed to connect nonprofits with ethical shipping partners, offering full transparency, reliability, and cost efficiency in aid delivery. One of the biggest milestones came when Elena pitched Global Bridge at a small networking event in Milan. Standing before a dozen investors and NGO leaders, her pregnant belly visible beneath a sleek black dress, Elena felt a flutter of nerves, but she steadied herself, drawing on everything she'd learned. She spoke passionately about the impact Global Bridge could have, closing the logistical gaps that often slowed critical aid. Supplies like vaccines, textbooks, and disaster relief goods could be delivered more effectively, faster, and at lower cost. By the end of her pitch, the room was buzzing with interest. A few attendees jotted down notes. One middle-aged investor from Paris, Marc Dupaul, asked sharp questions about scalability and profitability. Elena responded calmly, outlining how integrating advanced analytics and AI would streamline operations and reduce overhead costs. The NGO representatives in the room were especially intrigued by the potential for real-time tracking and resource allocation. By the end of the session, Elena had a thick stack of business cards and several requests for follow-up meetings. That night, she returned to her apartment buzzing with excitement. She replayed the pitch in her head, smiling every time she remembered the affirming nods and compliments. For the first time in what felt like forever, she truly believed she could build something meaningful, something that was entirely hers, untouched by Damien's influence or money. Of course, the shadow of her ongoing divorce still loomed. Every so often, Brenda would send her updates about Damien's shifting strategies. He had recently offered a generous financial settlement in exchange for a quiet, uncontested divorce, but it came with strings attached, paternal rights, and a proposed visitation schedule. Elena was torn. She wanted to move on, desperately. But part of her feared that allowing Damien any foothold in her life, even as a father, could jeopardize everything she was trying to rebuild. One sleepless night, her phone rang unexpectedly. It was Lorraine Whitmore. "I just wanted to check on you, dear," Lorraine said gently. "The media here has been relentless. I'm worried about you and the baby." Elena exhaled, a swirl of emotions rising in her chest. She appreciated Lorraine's concern, truly, but she also knew that the Whitmore name and everything it represented could never be fully separated from Damien. Still, Lorraine's tone was sincere. "I'm coping," Elena replied. "Milan's been good for me." There was a pause. Then Lorraine's voice softened further. "I hope one day you can forgive him," she said, trembling. "He's my son, and I'll always love him, but I know he's hurt you deeply." Forgiveness felt impossibly distant. The betrayal still sat raw and unhealed beneath Elena's calm surface. "I'm not there yet, Lorraine," she answered quietly, "but thank you for calling." After the call ended, Elena stared at her reflection in the apartment window. The city lights sparkled behind her, but what she focused on was her own posture. Calm, grounded, steady, she realized how much she had changed. The old Elena might have cried or spiraled, but the woman she was becoming? She was building something remarkable. Even the baby, who gave a gentle nudge inside her belly, seemed to recognize the shift in her. Elena placed a hand over her bump and allowed herself a quiet, hopeful smile. With each passing day, her venture in Milan was taking clearer shape. She began to attract a small but passionate team: tech developers, logistics strategists, and philanthropic advisors, each of them drawn to Elena's vision and determination. By the time her second trimester came to a close, she had secured her first round of seed funding. It wasn't anywhere near the billions Damien commanded back in the States, but it was hers, entirely hers. In quiet moments, Elena sometimes wondered if Damien might try to sabotage her efforts, or worse, attempt to co-opt her venture for his own gain. But as she watched her small company come to life, step by step, she realized something powerful. She no longer feared him. She was quite literally shaping a new future, one that didn't revolve around him or his name or his legacy. Yes, she was pregnant, yes, she had been betrayed, and yes, she was far from home. But she had never felt more alive. That sense of momentum, however, didn't last long. Just as Elena finalized a pilot deal with a mid-sized NGO, she received word that one of her key investors had pulled out, citing potential reputational complications. Later that day, Brenda confirmed what she feared. Someone from Damien's legal team had quietly contacted them, questioning the legality of her operations abroad while involved in an active custody dispute. It wasn't just personal anymore, it was professional sabotage. The sun was setting over the Navigli canals in Milan when Elena's phone rang, shattering her newfound peace. On the other end, Brenda's usually calm voice carried an edge of urgency. "Damien is contesting the divorce settlement," she said sharply. "He's also filing a petition to compel your return to the U.S. for custody-related hearings." Elena's stomach dropped. Clutching the phone, she paced the living room, golden dusk light spilling across the tiled floor. "He what? After what he did? Now he wants to drag me back to a courtroom in Chicago?" Her voice shook with disbelief and fury. She had hoped, naively, that Damien would settle things with grace, especially given the public backlash he was still facing after the scandal. But apparently, he was changing tactics. Brenda explained that Damien's legal team was portraying Elena's move to Italy as an act of parental alienation, a calculated attempt to keep him from his unborn child. They were framing her relocation as bitter and vengeful. "We can fight this," Brenda reassured her. "You're not hiding. You're building a legitimate career here. You've established residency. You needed space to protect yourself and your child. The law will see that. But we need to be ready for a legal fight." "He's trying to hit me from all angles," Elena muttered. "Not just in court, but in business. He wants to scare off my backers, undermine everything I'm building." A wave of cold dread swept over Elena. She had come to Milan to heal, to rebuild, to start over, not to get dragged into a transatlantic legal war. The idea of facing Damien in a courtroom again, while pregnant, filled her with unease. But as Brenda calmly laid out their legal strategy, a familiar fire reignited inside her. No, she wouldn't allow Damien or anyone else to dictate her life. Over the weeks that followed, the pressure escalated. Damien's attorneys began flooding her with legal notices. Another letter arrived, this time demanding documentation of Elena's living expenses, financial details about Global Bridge, and even medical records from her pregnancy. The invasiveness of it all felt like a violation, a manipulative power move disguised as legal formality. But Elena did her best to remain grounded, keeping her focus on her growing company and the rapidly approaching due date. She had come too far to allow fear to pull her backward. Then, in a move that completely blindsided her, Damien showed up in Milan, unannounced. She first heard about it from Adriana, who called her after spotting him outside Palazzo Reale during a fashion exhibit. Elena's stomach dropped. She had dreaded the possibility of a confrontation, and now it was inevitable. 2 days later, it happened. From her balcony, she spotted a black luxury car pulling up outside her building. Damien stepped out, flanked by 2 men in tailored suits, security no doubt. Her heart pounded in her chest. She rushed downstairs to the lobby, not wanting him to force his way into her home. She needed to control the situation, on her terms. When she stepped off the elevator, she saw him pacing near the lobby entrance. He looked both exhausted and determined. He wore a sharp navy suit, his hair styled perfectly, every inch the man she had once fallen for. The poised, magnetic entrepreneur. For a second, it almost felt familiar. Then she remembered Celeste's smug smile. The betrayal. The nights of silence and unanswered questions. "Elena," he said, turning toward her. His eyes immediately dropped to her pregnant belly, and a flash of pain crossed his face. "You look." He paused, searching for the right words. "You look well." She folded her arms over her stomach, her voice cool. "What are you doing here, Damien?" He stepped a little closer, lowering his voice. "Can we talk? Privately?" She nodded stiffly and led him toward a quieter corner of the lobby, away from prying eyes. "I don't appreciate you showing up like this," she said, her tone sharp. "If you needed to see me, you could have gone through my lawyer." Damien sighed, running a hand through his neatly styled hair. "Elena, this is important. I know I've made mistakes, terrible ones, but I don't want to lose you, or our child." His voice cracked on the last word. "Let me fix this." Her anger ignited. Fierce and unwavering, she pressed a hand protectively against her belly. "You don't get to just fly to Milan and play the regretful husband, Damien. You made your bed." "Literally," Elena said coldly. "I'm done being your afterthought." Damien's jaw tightened. "I was under immense pressure, okay? The company, the expansions. I lost sight of what mattered. Celeste was a distraction, a stupid one. But that doesn't mean I don't love you." Elena let out a bitter laugh. "You have a twisted way of showing love." They stood in heavy silence, the polished marble floor beneath them casting back a fractured reflection of their confrontation, like some warped version of the life they once shared. Finally, Damien stepped back, his voice lowering. "I'm willing to settle the divorce amicably," he said. "I want to provide for you and for the baby, but I also want to be part of my child's life. I need your guarantee that you won't shut me out." Elena studied him closely, her eyes narrowing. Was this sincerity, or just another carefully calculated move? But even through the anger, she couldn't deny one truth. Their child was half Damien. Unless he gave her reason to believe he was unfit, she couldn't keep him away forever. "I'm not trying to shut you out," she said finally, her tone guarded but calm. "But you destroyed the trust between us. And now, you're fighting me in court. You tried to force me back to the States." Damien nodded, a flicker of guilt flashing across his face. "My lawyer said it was the most strategic move. He paused, letting out a long, heavy breath. "Maybe we can find a compromise. I'll drop the custody petition. If you let me be there for the birth, let me be a father." His words lingered in the air, stirring a storm of conflicted feelings inside her. After everything he had done, part of her wanted to shut the door on him forever. But another part, deep down, knew that if he truly committed to fatherhood, it could change him, and it might matter to the child one day. "I'll think about it," Elena said at last, her voice tight. "But don't ever show up here again without notice, and don't try to control me with legal threats. I'm building a life for myself here, and I won't let you sabotage it." A flicker of remorse crossed Damien's face. "I understand," he said quietly. He hesitated, then gave a strained, almost broken smile. "You look radiant, by the way. Pregnancy suits you." Elena didn't respond. She turned away before her resolve could falter. Without another word, Damien left, his bodyguards flanking him as he disappeared through the lobby doors. Elena stood alone, the silence settling around her like fog. She exhaled shakily, tears stinging behind her eyes. Despite her outward composure, the confrontation had left Elena rattled. She realized that fully disentangling herself from Damien would be far more difficult than she had imagined. But she also understood something even more important. Her life no longer revolved around him. She had Global Bridge, new friendships, and the bright promise of a future that was hers and hers alone. Damien's sudden arrival in Milan may have threatened her peace, but it wouldn't derail her. The storm had followed her across an ocean, but she would not drown in it. She would rise, just as she always had, and protect the life she was building. What shocked her most wasn't just his presence, but the man trailing behind him. A sharply dressed attorney holding a leather-bound folder. Damien hadn't come just to talk. He'd come with papers, with strategy, with pressure. "You can review this with your lawyer," he'd said, sliding the folder across the marble table of the hotel cafe. "But I'd rather settle this quietly, for the baby." It was a trap cloaked in faux concern, one that Elena refused to fall into. Her voice was cold steel when she pushed the folder back toward him. "If you want anything, speak to Brenda. Don't ever show up like this again." Fueled by that determination, Elena doubled down on her focus at Global Bridge. It became almost an act of defiance, as though each milestone, each step forward, was another wall built between her and the chaos Damien stirred up. She dove into investor meetings, product development sessions, and prenatal care with relentless purpose. Her workdays unfolded at a vibrant co-working space near Corso Garibaldi, its walls adorned with world maps and motivational murals in bold colors. Her team, once just a few part-timers, had grown into a solid unit of 8. Developers worked late into the night, refining algorithms that connected NGOs to vetted, ethical shipping partners. Elena oversaw prototype testing, gathered user feedback, and watched with pride as Global Bridge blossomed into a real, functioning platform. The day they launched their private beta, she treated her team to pizza at a cozy neighborhood pizzeria, a humble, joyful celebration that felt worlds away from the champagne-drenched parties of her old life. Still, amid the exhilaration of building something new, Elena couldn't ignore the realities of her pregnancy. Now well into her 3rd trimester, her belly was prominent, and her energy dipped more quickly. Her ankles swelled, and sleep came in short, uncomfortable bursts. Dr. Lucia Romano advised her to slow down and prioritize rest. Though it went against her nature, Elena took the advice to heart. She adjusted her schedule, delegated more to her growing leadership team, and carved out time for daily walks around Parco Sempione. a lush retreat where she could breathe, reflect, and reconnect with her body. On one such afternoon walk, Giancarlo Benedetti joined her. They strolled side by side along the winding paths beneath tall, swaying trees. Birds chirped from above, and a soft breeze danced through the foliage, lending a peaceful rhythm to their conversation. "I'm proud of how far you've come," Giancarlo said, his hands in his pockets as they walked. "Global Bridge has real potential. We've got several major NGOs eager to join once beta testing wraps." Elena smiled, her face lighting with quiet pride. "It's been a whirlwind. Sometimes I can't believe how different my life is now." He nodded thoughtfully. "It suits you. You're not just Damian Whitmore's ex-wife anymore. You're Elena Martinez, a force in your own right." Her expression softened, a hint of humor in her voice. "A pregnant force to be reckoned with," she said, gently resting a hand on her belly. Giancarlo laughed. "That only adds to your mystique." Their companionship had grown into a friendship Elena deeply cherished. He never pried into her past with Damian, though he clearly understood the situation. Their bond was built on mutual respect, shared ambition, and an unspoken agreement. Some wounds need time and space to heal. A few days later, Elena attended a routine prenatal appointment and received unexpected news. Her baby was measuring large and healthy. Dr. Lucia Romano mentioned the possibility of an early delivery. Instead of fear, Elena felt a thrill of excitement, tempered by just the right amount of nerves. She was about to become a mother. That truth, that transformation, now eclipsed every business deal and emotional scar she carried. The following month passed in a blur of preparations. Adriana helped her decorate the nursery, a cheerful little room painted in calming pastels, the walls adorned with whimsical hot air balloons and playful animals. Elena ordered a sleek, handcrafted Italian crib and stocked up on baby essentials, determined to embrace motherhood with both grace and independence. Meanwhile, updates from Brenda back in the US brought cautious relief. Damian's legal team had softened their position, perhaps influenced by the conversation they had in Milan. He was no longer insisting she return stateside immediately, though he still requested a formal custody agreement once the baby was born. Elena dreaded the thought of post-birth legal negotiations, but part of her felt relieved that tensions hadn't escalated. Then, without warning, it happened. At 2 a.m., Elena felt the first contractions. The early signs were unmistakable. Adriana and Giancarlo rushed her to the hospital, both staying close as she was admitted into a brightly lit delivery room. The atmosphere was filled with tension and tenderness. Monitors blinking, voices hushed but alert, nurses and midwives working calmly and quickly. She labored through hours of deep, bone-rattling pain. Time blurred, a dizzying mix of breathing techniques, whispered encouragement and steady hands gripping hers. And then, at last, the room filled with the sharp, powerful wail of a newborn. The newborn's cry filled the room, piercing and pure. Elena gazed down at her tiny daughter, swaddled in a soft blanket. Dark hair clung to the baby's delicate scalp, and her eyes squinted against the hospital lights. Tears blurred Elena's vision. Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every sleepless night, all of it seemed to melt away in a single, awestruck moment of love and gratitude. She named her daughter Solana, a tribute to the sunshine that had once lit her path back in California, and a symbol of the radiant new beginning blooming inside her heart. Cradling Solana gently in her arms, Elena kissed the baby's soft forehead, whispering promises of a life filled with security, joy, and freedom from the shadows of the past. Adriana and Giancarlo stood nearby, quiet tears shining in their eyes. It felt, in that moment, like a small family had formed around her, not one bound by blood, but by loyalty, love, and choice. In that quiet hospital room in Milan, Elena realized she hadn't just built a business. She had created a new kind of empire, one built on meaningful friendships, purpose-driven work, and a future she alone controlled. Long after visiting hours ended, she sat in silence, watching Solana sleep. The baby's chest rose and fell in soft rhythm, and Elena marveled at how much had changed in such a short time. She was no longer the betrayed wife of a billionaire. She was a mother, an entrepreneur, a woman who no longer needed validation from anyone else. As she drifted off to sleep, exhausted but elated, she clung to one profound truth. No matter how stormy the seas of life may be, she now had the strength to chart her own course. A course guided by love, ambition, and unwavering hope. Balancing motherhood with a budding startup tested Elena's limits. She took late-night investor calls while rocking Solana to sleep. She squeezed in product development meetings between diaper changes. She rarely slept, but she never gave up. Watching Global Bridge gain traction gave her energy to push forward. Following a series of successful beta tests, major nonprofits praised the platform's effectiveness in delivering aid to remote areas. Investors saw real potential. Elena threw herself into perfecting it, driven by a belief that better logistics could transform global humanitarian work. But progress never came without resistance. Damien re-emerged, demanding a role in Solana's life. Legal battles followed as he pushed aggressively for custody arrangements. Determined to protect her daughter, Elena held firm, negotiating only through her attorney and on her own terms. The emotional weight was real. But she refused to let Damien's interference distract her from the bigger mission. Then came the next major milestone. Elena was invited to present Global Bridge at a major social impact conference in Berlin. She boarded the flight with Solana in tow, Adriana right beside her, unwavering as ever. And when Elena stood on stage, holding her own, she presented real-world case studies, real impact, real success. Aid delivered faster and more affordably to crisis zones. Elena outlined her vision for scaling Global Bridge into new regions, partnering with even more nonprofits and agencies worldwide. The audience's enthusiastic response nearly brought her to tears. In that moment, she felt vindicated. Her pain, her setbacks, her heartbreak, they hadn't derailed her. They had shaped her. After the presentation, a crowd of interested collaborators surrounded her, eager to learn more, to be part of something meaningful. From the stage, Elena caught sight of Adriana, standing in the back of the room, gently rocking Solana in her arms. A wave of gratitude swelled in Elena's chest. Her daughter was her greatest purpose, a living symbol of rebirth, of a life rebuilt. Far from betrayal, far from fear. Later that evening, back at the hotel, a Global Bridge team member handed her a printed letter that had arrived via one of their NGO partners. It was from a nurse stationed at a field hospital in Syria. The letter was short, but its words struck deep. Your platform delivered insulin to us in 3 days. You saved a dozen children. We didn't think anyone was coming. You came. Elena sat on the edge of the bed, holding Solana close, tears running silently down her face. It was the moment she truly understood. This was bigger than her. Bigger than her pain. This was purpose. Back in Milan, Elena dove headfirst into work once again. Every new partnership signed, every NGO onboarded to the platform reminded her of just how far she had come. Though negotiations with Damien remained ongoing and occasionally tense, her focus never wavered. She was raising Solana in a world of love, stability, and independence. And with Global Bridge expanding, Elena could feel it. She was on the verge of something bigger, not just a successful business, a legacy. In the months following Solana's birth, Elena tapped into a strength she never knew she had. Global Bridge exploded in popularity. Nonprofits praised its efficiency. Investors saw scalable potential. Major media outlets ran features on Elena, no longer referring to her as the scorned ex-wife of a tech billionaire, but as a rising star in social innovation. In Milan, she upgraded to a larger apartment, creating a bright nursery for Solana and a sleek home office where she managed her growing team across time zones. Damien remained in the picture, but on her terms. Monthly video calls gave him limited access to Solana, but Elena's life was hers to shape now. And then came her breakthrough. Amal Clooney personally invited her to speak at the World Philanthropy Summit in Geneva, a global gathering of diplomats, changemakers, and humanitarians. Elena knew immediately this was more than just another speaking engagement. This was her moment. Stepping onto the polished platform of the summit hall, she faced a room filled with influential leaders, global thinkers, and high-profile philanthropists. Her voice calm and clear, Elena began her keynote, a concise but powerful journey through her mission to streamline humanitarian logistics, layered with personal stories of resilience and rebirth. She shared real-world examples, how Global Bridge had cut delivery times in half, how it had connected vaccines and relief supplies to some of the most remote corners of the world. Photos flashed on screen, graphs revealed impact, stories brought data to life. Her closing line was soft but unforgettable. Logistics can unite our world, because when aid moves faster, hope arrives sooner. The audience rose in applause. Tears stung Elena's eyes, not from sadness, but from triumph. She had rewritten her story. She was no longer just someone who had survived betrayal. She was a builder of bridges, a mother, a visionary, and a voice for transformation on the world stage. A fractured world, one shipment at a time. The applause was thunderous. After her presentation, luminaries from global NGOs, humanitarian coalitions, and top-tier investment firms lined up to meet her, eager to discuss partnerships with Global Bridge. Amid the enthusiastic handshakes and exchanged business cards, Elena spotted Adriana in the back of the room, gently rocking a sleeping Solana. The sight of her daughter, so small, so peaceful, resting in the heart of such a powerful space, filled Elena with a rush of gratitude so deep it nearly brought her to tears. That night, back in her Geneva hotel suite, Elena sat by the window with Solana nestled against her chest. City lights twinkled outside, her heart swelled. From heartbreak and betrayal to purpose, power, and peace. She had rewritten her story, not just for herself, but for her daughter, and for a world that needed new ways to hope. What began as survival had become something more. A legacy of light, a life built from the ashes, stronger, freer, and undeniably her own. As Solana stirred gently in her sleep, Elena looked out over the quiet skyline and whispered, "One day, you'll understand why I walked away and how far we came." Outside, the wind shifted, rustling the curtains, like a promise. The next chapter hadn't been written yet. But for once, Elena couldn't wait to see what came next. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey of heartbreak, resilience, and ultimate transformation. Elena's story is a powerful reminder that no matter how dark the storm, we each carry the strength to rise. Through betrayal, divorce, and the collapse of a fairy tale, she built an empire rooted in purpose, on foreign soil, but on her own terms. She wasn't just rebuilding, she was becoming. And in doing so, she showed the world, and more importantly herself, that true strength doesn't come from perfection, but from perseverance. If Elena's journey lit a fire in you, if it reminded you of your own inner power, like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this. And subscribe for more real powerful stories that inspire bold comebacks and fearless reinventions. Your support helps us keep this community growing, and you are part of what makes it extraordinary. Until next time, keep rising.